In the morning, my son told me that my husband had died in the hospital. I was devastated. Until a bank called me. "Ma'am, your husband has just emptied the joint account." When I asked to see the security footage, I couldn't believe who was there. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The morning light came through the kitchen window the way it always did, soft and golden, touching the same countertop where I'd made coffee for 43 years. I was standing there holding an empty mug when my son Paul walked through the door with eyes I didn't recognize. "Mom," he said, and I knew. Before he spoke another word, I knew. "Your father passed away at 4 this morning." The mug didn't fall. My hands didn't shake. I simply set it down on the counter and nodded. Because at 67 years old, you learn that grief doesn't always arrive with dramatics. Sometimes it settles on you like dust, quiet and inevitable. "I'm sorry I couldn't get here sooner," Paul continued, his voice strained. "The hospital called me first because you weren't answering your phone. I had turned it off the night before. Richard had been in the ICU for 11 days following his stroke, and I couldn't bear another middle-of-the-night call telling me his condition was unchanged. I'd needed one night of sleep, just one, and now I would carry that choice forever." "It's all right," I told Paul, though of course it wasn't. Nothing would be all right again, but that's what you say. That's what mothers do. He moved closer, awkward in his grief, and pulled me into an embrace that felt rehearsed. When had my son become a stranger who hugged like he was following instructions? His wife Jessica stood in the doorway behind him, her face arranged in an expression of concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We'll handle everything, Kathy," she said, using my first name though I'd asked her to call me Mom 100 times. "The funeral arrangements, the paperwork, all of it. You just rest. Rest." As if I were the one who needed managing. The next hours passed in a fog of condolence calls and casserole deliveries. Our small town of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, operated on well-worn rituals, and death was one they'd perfected. By noon, my kitchen was full of food I wouldn't eat, and people I didn't want to see. Paul and Jessica stayed, hovering, and I noticed them exchanging glances I couldn't interpret. When my daughter Caroline arrived from Pittsburgh that evening, red-eyed and rumpled, the atmosphere shifted in a way I couldn't name. "Mom," she said, crushing me in a hug that felt real. Caroline had always been more like me. Direct, practical, unafraid of emotion. I can't believe he's gone. But I could believe it. Richard had been slipping away for years. In small increments I'd tried not to acknowledge. The man who used to recite poetry while we did dishes had become someone who grunted at the television and forgot our anniversary. The stroke had simply finished what time had started. That night, alone in our bedroom, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in our bed. I sat instead in the reading chair by the window, watching the moon trace its path across the sky, and let myself finally cry. The phone rang at 7 the next morning. "Mrs. Cuban, this is Jennifer Myrick from First National Bank." I recognized the name. She was our primary account manager, had been for 15 years. "Good morning, Jennifer. I apologize, but this isn't a good time. My husband just—" "Mrs. Cuban, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there's been activity on your joint checking account that I felt you should know about immediately." Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. "What kind of activity?" "A withdrawal was made yesterday afternoon. The entire balance, $247,000. The room tilted. "That's impossible. Richard was in the hospital. He passed away yesterday morning." Silence on the other end, heavy with implication. "Mrs. Cuban, the withdrawal was made at 3:45 p.m. in person at our downtown branch. I'm looking at the transaction record right now." My mind raced. There must be some mistake. Some kind of error in your system. I thought so too, which is why I'm calling. "But Mrs. Cuban, the signature on the withdrawal slip matches our records for your husband's signature. And there's video footage from the branch." "Video footage," I repeated, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "Yes, ma'am. Would you like to come in and review it? I think you should see this yourself." I was in my car within 15 minutes, still wearing the same clothes I'd slept in. The bank was a 20-minute drive into downtown Millbrook, and every minute felt like an hour. My mind spun through impossible scenarios. A banking error. Identity theft. Some bizarre administrative mistake that would be explained away by an apologetic manager. But Jennifer's voice had carried something else. Not confusion, not uncertainty, certainty. When I arrived, she met me at the door, her professional smile not quite masking the concern in her eyes. She was younger than my daughter, probably in her early 40s, but she treated me with a respect that felt genuine. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said, leading me through the lobby and into a small office at the back. "I've queued up the footage to the relevant timestamp." She clicked her mouse, and a black and white image filled her computer screen. The camera angle showed the teller counter from above, capturing a figure approaching window number 3. "This is 3:43 p.m. yesterday," Jennifer said softly. I leaned forward, squinting at the grainy image. The person approaching the counter wore a baseball cap pulled low and a bulky jacket despite the warm September weather. Something about the way they moved was familiar, but I couldn't place it. The figure handed something to the teller, presumably the withdrawal slip. Then they looked up, just for a moment, and the camera caught their face. My heart stopped. It wasn't Richard. But I knew that face. I'd known it for 38 years, had watched it change from boyhood to middle age, had memorized every expression and gesture. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." Jennifer said nothing, letting me process what I was seeing. The man at the counter, withdrawing every penny from the account I'd spent 4 decades filling, wasn't my dead husband. It was my son. It was Paul. I watched, paralyzed, as he accepted a bank envelope from the teller, tucked it into his jacket, and walked out of frame. The timestamp read 3:47 p.m., approximately 11 hours after he'd stood in my kitchen and told me his father had died that morning. Approximately 9 hours before he'd hugged me with that rehearsed awkwardness and offered to handle everything. "Mrs. Cuban?" Jennifer's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you all right?" I wasn't all right. I was standing on the edge of something I didn't understand, looking down into a darkness that had been hiding in plain sight. "That's my son," I heard myself say. "But the signature, you said the signature matched Richard's." Jennifer nodded slowly. "It did. Perfectly, actually. Which is why the teller processed the transaction without question. Forged. Paul had forged his father's signature. But how? And why? And more importantly, what else had he done? "I need to speak with the police," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've already filed a report with our fraud department," Jennifer said. "But yes, you should definitely contact the authorities. Mrs. Cuban, I have to ask, did your son have any legal access to this account? Power of attorney, perhaps?" "No, nothing like that. He shouldn't have been able to touch that money." But even as I said it, doubt crept in. Had Richard given Paul access? Had there been documents I hadn't seen? Arrangements made behind my back? I thanked Jennifer and walked out of the bank on legs that didn't feel like my own. The morning sun was bright, obscenely cheerful, and I stood in the parking lot trying to remember how to breathe. My phone buzzed. A text from Paul. "Mom, where are you? We need to discuss funeral arrangements. Jessica and I are at the house." Of course they were. In my house. Probably going through Richard's things, looking for… what? What else were they planning to take? I got in my car and sat there, gripping the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to drive home and confront him immediately, to demand answers and watch him squirm. But another part of me, the part that had survived 6 decades by being careful and observant, knew that would be a mistake. If Paul had stolen nearly $250,000 from me the day his father died, he'd been planning it. This wasn't impulse. This was calculated. And if he could do that, what else was he capable of? I needed to know what I was walking into before I confronted him. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening. I pulled out my phone and called Caroline. "Mom, is everything okay? Where are you right now?" "I'm at the hotel. I was about to head over to the house." "Why? You sound strange." "Don't go to the house yet. Meet me at Rosie's Diner in 20 minutes. And Caroline, don't tell Paul." Silence. Then, "Mom, what's going on?" 20 minutes, I repeated, "and come alone." I hung up before she could ask more questions. As I drove toward the diner, my mind kept returning to that image on the bank's security footage. Paul, taking everything, the day his father died. Paul, who'd arrived at my house that morning with Jessica by his side, ready to handle everything. Ready to manage me, I realize now. To keep me distracted and pliable while they did what? The pieces weren't fitting together yet, but I could feel them starting to align, creating a picture I didn't want to see. At a red light, I closed my eyes and saw Richard's face, not as he'd been in those final days, gray and diminished, but as he'd been years ago, strong, proud, sometimes too proud. What secrets had he taken to his grave? And what had he left behind for me to find? Caroline was already at the diner when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. She looked up as I approached, and I saw the worry etched across her face. My daughter had always been able to read me better than anyone. "Mom, you're scaring me," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. "What's happened?" I glanced around the diner. Rosie's was nearly empty at this hour, just a couple of truckers at the counter and Rosie herself in the kitchen. Still, I lowered my voice. Yesterday afternoon, while Paul was supposedly handling things at the hospital, he went to the bank and withdrew every penny from the joint account your father and I shared. $247,000. Caroline's face went pale. "What? No, that can't be right. Paul wouldn't—" I saw the security footage myself. It was him. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd asked Jennifer to email me, a still frame from the video. "He forged your father's signature." My daughter stared at the image, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Finally, she whispered, "Oh my God, Mom, does he know you know?" "Not yet. We have to call the police right now. This is theft, it's fraud, it's—" "Wait." I put my hand over hers. "Before we do anything, I need to understand what's happening. This wasn't random, Caroline. Paul planned this. He knew exactly when to do it, how to do it, which means he's been thinking about this for a while. But why? Paul has a good job. He and Jessica aren't hurting for money. Weren't they?" I realized I didn't actually know much about my son's financial situation. He worked in commercial real estate development, something that had always seemed vaguely successful, but he'd become increasingly secretive over the years. Family dinners had turned into interrogations where Jessica would deflect every personal question with practiced ease. "I need to know what else is going on," I said. "Before I confront him, I need to understand the full picture." Caroline nodded slowly, her legal training kicking in. She wasn't a criminal attorney, but she understood strategy. "Okay, so what do you want to do?" "I want to go through your father's papers, his office, his files, everything. If Paul was planning this, maybe your father knew something. Maybe there are other documents, other accounts. Do you think Dad was involved?" The pain in her voice was obvious. I didn't want to think it, but I'd learned one terrible truth in the last hour. I didn't know my family as well as I thought I did. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I need to find out." We finished our coffee and drove separately back to the house. My house. I had to start thinking of it that way now. Paul's car was still in the driveway, and through the window I could see him and Jessica moving around in the kitchen. "How do we get them to leave?" Caroline asked as we stood outside. "Leave that to me." I walked in through the front door, Caroline behind me, and arranged my face into what I hoped looked like exhausted grief. It wasn't hard. The grief was real enough, even if its sources were multiplying. "Mom!" Paul stood quickly, Jessica right beside him. "Where were you?" "We've been worried. I needed some air," I said simply. "I went for a drive." "You should have told us," Jessica said, that false concern coating every word. "You shouldn't be alone at a time like this." "I'm not alone. Caroline's here." I moved toward the stairs. "I'm going to lie down for a while. I didn't sleep well." "Of course," Paul said. "We'll stay down here and make some calls about the funeral home. Unless you want to." "You handle it," I said. "I trust you." The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I saw something flicker in Paul's eyes. Relief? Satisfaction? He thought I was giving him control, making him the decision maker. Good. Let him think that. Caroline followed me upstairs, and we went to the master bedroom. As soon as the door closed, she whispered, "Dad's office?" I nodded. Richard's office was at the end of the hall, a small room he'd claimed as his sanctuary. I hadn't been in there much over the years. It had been his space, full of his books and his papers and his secrets. The door was locked. I stared at it, confused. He never locked this door. Do you have a key? I don't even know where he kept keys. I tried the handle again, frustrated. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Mom? Paul's voice. Do you need anything? Caroline and I exchanged glances. No, honey, I called out. Just getting some things from the bedroom. We heard him pause, then continue down the hall. He stopped right outside the office door. Mom, I was thinking I should probably start going through Dad's papers. You know, for the estate, the will, all that legal stuff. Do you know where he kept his important documents? There it was. He wanted access to Richard's office. He wanted to get there first. I'm not sure, I said through the door. I'll look for them tomorrow. I'm too tired right now. Another pause. Okay. Sure. Just let me know if you need help. His footsteps retreated, but slowly, reluctantly. Caroline pulled me into the bedroom and closed the door. He's looking for something, she whispered. The question is what? We waited until we heard Paul and Jessica leave an hour later, their voices carrying false cheerfulness about picking up programs from the funeral home. As soon as their car pulled away, I went to work. I'd lived in this house for 43 years. I knew its secrets. The loose floorboard in the hallway closet where I'd hidden Christmas presents, the false back in the linen cabinet where I'd kept emergency cash. And I knew that Richard, for all his faults, had been predictable in certain ways. In our bedroom, I went to his nightstand and pulled out the bottom drawer completely. Taped to the underside was a small envelope. Inside were 3 keys. Mom, you're brilliant, Caroline breathed. The third key opened the office door. The room looked undisturbed, everything in its place. Richard's desk sat beneath the window, papers neatly stacked, pens in their holder. His bookshelves lined 2 walls, full of history books and old novels. Nothing seemed unusual, but I knew better than to trust appearances now. You take the desk, I told Caroline. I'll start with the filing cabinet. We worked in silence, methodical and careful. Caroline found bank statements, utility bills, tax returns, all ordinary. The filing cabinet yielded insurance policies, medical records, the deed to the house. Then Caroline said, Mom, look at this. She was holding a folder marked property documents. Inside were papers for our house, as expected. But there were also documents for another property, a cabin in the Pocono Mountains, purchased 8 years ago. Did you know about this? Caroline asked. I shook my head. We'd never had a cabin, never discussed buying one. Where had the money come from? Beneath that folder was another, unmarked. Caroline opened it, and we both stared at the contents. Credit card statements. Not for cards I recognized. The charges went back 3 years. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores, tens of thousands of dollars. Oh, Mom, Caroline whispered. An affair. Richard had been having an affair. The grief I'd been holding at bay transformed into something sharper, harder. But I couldn't afford to fall apart now. I needed to think. Keep looking, I said, my voice flat. 10 minutes later, Caroline found the life insurance policy. $2 million, dated 6 months ago. The beneficiary had been changed from me to Paul, and there it was, the missing piece. Paul knew, I said slowly. He knew about the life insurance. He knew Dad was going to die, and he knew he'd be getting $2 million. So why steal from the bank account? Caroline asked. That was the question. If Paul was inheriting $2 million, why risk everything for $250,000 from the bank? Unless he needed money immediately. Unless he was desperate. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. An unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Cubbin? This is Detective Roxanne Reeves with the Millbrook Police Department. Jennifer Myrick at First National Bank filed a fraud report regarding your account. I'd like to ask you a few questions. Finally, official involvement. Yes, of course. When would you like to meet? Actually, I'm outside your house right now. I saw your car in the driveway. Would you mind if I came in? I felt a chill run down my spine. I glanced at Caroline, whose face reflected my own concern. Give me one moment, I said into the phone. I muted the call and turned to Caroline. The police are here. Help me put everything back exactly as we found it. We worked quickly, replacing files, closing drawers. But as we were finishing, I heard the front door open downstairs. Mom, we're back, Jessica's voice. Caroline and I froze. They weren't supposed to be back yet. I'll go talk to them, Caroline whispered. You deal with the detective. She slipped out of the office while I grabbed the folders we'd been looking at, the property documents, the credit card statements, the life insurance policy, and tucked them under my sweater. Then I locked the office door behind me and went downstairs. Detective Reeves was standing in my living room, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Paul and Jessica were there too, looking confused and concerned. Mrs. Cuban, the detective said, I'm sorry for your loss. I understand your husband passed away recently. Yesterday morning, I confirmed. And yet someone withdrew a significant amount from your joint account yesterday afternoon, using your husband's identification and signature. Paul's face was a perfect mask of shock. What? That's impossible. I was at the hospital all afternoon. The lie came so easily to him, so smoothly. Were you? Detective Reeves asked, turning to him. I'll need to verify that. You are? Paul Cuban, the son. And you were at Millbrook General Hospital from what time to what time yesterday? I watched Paul's face carefully. He knew he was caught, had to know that the bank had security footage, but his expression never wavered. From about 10 a.m. until early evening, he said. My mother can confirm. She called me while I was there. Had I? I tried to remember. The day was a blur of shock and grief. Actually, Jessica interjected, I can confirm it too. I was with Paul most of the day. Of course she was backing him up. They'd planned for this. Detective Reeves made a note. I see. Well, the bank has security footage that I'll need to review. Mrs. Cuban, do you have any idea who might have had access to your husband's identification? No, I said carefully. But I'd very much like to know. The detective handed me her card. I'll be in touch. In the meantime, if you notice anything else unusual, missing documents, strange transactions, please contact me immediately. After she left, Paul turned to me, his face full of wounded confusion. Mom, what's going on? Someone stole from you? Apparently so. We need to get to the bottom of this, he said firmly. Jessica and I will help you review all of Dad's accounts. Make sure nothing else is missing. That won't be necessary, I said. Caroline and I can handle it. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, quickly hidden. Mom, you shouldn't have to deal with this alone. Let us help. I said no, Paul. The room went quiet. I never spoke to my son that way. Never contradicted him so directly. Jessica's eyes narrowed. Kathy, she said carefully, we're just trying to support you. This is a difficult time and you're clearly overwhelmed. I'm not overwhelmed, I said. I'm perfectly clear-headed. Paul's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I saw his face go pale. I need to take this, he said, already moving toward the door. Work emergency. Jessica followed him, and through the window, I watched them standing by their car, arguing in hushed, urgent tones. Caroline came to stand beside me. What do you think that was about? I don't know, but we're running out of time. I pulled the folders from under my sweater. We need to figure out what Paul is really after before he makes his next move. Because he would make another move. I was certain of that now. The question was, would I be ready for it? That night, Caroline and I spread the documents across my kitchen table like puzzle pieces to a picture we didn't want to see. The cabin papers, the credit card statements, the life insurance policy with Paul's name where mine should have been. We need to find out who Dad was seeing, Caroline said, running her finger down a list of hotel charges. Look at this. The Riverside Inn in Easton. He stayed there twice a month for the past 2 years. Easton is where Paul lives, I said quietly. Caroline looked up sharply. You think Paul knew about the affair? I think Paul knew everything. I pulled the life insurance policy closer. 6 months ago, Richard changed the beneficiary. Around the same time, according to these credit card statements, his spending increased dramatically. It's like he stopped trying to hide it. Or like someone found out and started blackmailing him. The word hung in the air between us. Blackmail. My son, blackmailing his dying father. We need proof, I said. We need to know for certain. Caroline nodded. The cabin. We should go there. Maybe there's evidence, documents, records, something that explains all this. Tomorrow, I agreed. First thing in the morning. But tomorrow came faster than expected. At 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of breaking glass. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, straining to hear. Silence, then footsteps downstairs. Someone was in my house. I grabbed my phone and crept to the bedroom door. The hallway was dark, but I could see a faint glow of light coming from Richard's office. Someone was in there, searching. I dialed 911, but before I could hit send, a hand clamped over my mouth. Don't scream. Caroline's voice, barely a whisper. There are two of them. I saw them from my room. We stood frozen in the darkness, listening to the sounds of drawers being opened, papers rustling. The intruders were methodical, professional. This wasn't random. Then a voice, male and frustrated. It's not here. Are you sure this is where he kept it? That's what the old man said. Check the desk again. My blood ran cold. The old man. They were talking about Richard. But Richard was dead, unless he wasn't. The thought hit me like a physical blow. Paul had told me Richard died at 4 a.m., but the bank withdrawal happened at 3:47 p.m., nearly 12 hours later. What if Richard hadn't died when Paul said he did? What if he'd lived long enough to make that withdrawal himself, with Paul's help? What if my husband had faked his own death? The pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. The changed beneficiary, the secret cabin, the affair, the theft. All of it pointed to a man planning to disappear. But something had gone wrong. They're coming upstairs, Caroline breathed. We backed into my bedroom. I grabbed the heavy lamp from my nightstand. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. Caroline positioned herself behind the door. Footsteps in the hallway. The beam of a flashlight sweeping under the door. Then voices, urgent and angry, coming from outside. Car doors slamming. The intruders cursed and ran back downstairs. I heard the back door crash open, then silence. I ran to the window. Two figures were sprinting across my back lawn toward the woods. And pulling into my driveway was a police cruiser, lights flashing. Did you call the police? Caroline asked. No. Did you? We exchanged confused glances and hurried downstairs. Detective Reeves was already at my front door, two uniformed officers with her. Mrs. Cuban, are you all right? We got a silent alarm notification from your address. Silent alarm? I stared at her. I don't have a silent alarm. The detective frowned. According to our system, a security alarm was installed here about 2 weeks ago, registered to this address. The company called it in when the back door sensor was triggered. 3 weeks ago, right around the time Richard had his stroke. Someone broke in, I said. 2 men. They were in my husband's office, searching for something. The officers immediately went to search the house while Detective Reeves questioned us. When they returned, one was holding a small black device. Found this in the office, he said. It's a listening device, professional grade. My house had been bugged. How long has that been there? I asked, my voice shaking. No way to tell without examining it, the officer said. But these models typically have a battery life of about 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Someone had been listening to everything Caroline and I discussed. Everything we'd discovered. They knew we'd found the documents. Mrs. Cuban, Detective Reeves said carefully, I need to ask you something. When we ran a standard background check on your family members, something unusual came up. Your son Paul filed for bankruptcy 8 months ago. Did you know about that? The room tilted. No, he never said anything. He was in debt for over $3 million. Bad investments in commercial real estate. He lost everything. $3 million. The life insurance policy was for $2 million. It wouldn't even be enough to cover his losses. That's why he needs the money now, Caroline said. The bankruptcy court must have found other assets, frozen accounts. He needs cash immediately. There's more, the detective continued. I reviewed the hospital security footage from yesterday. Paul Cuban was not at Millbrook General Hospital between 3 and 5 p.m. In fact, he left at 2:30 and didn't return until after 6. So he had lied. and Jessica had lied to cover for him. The bank security footage clearly shows him making the withdrawal, Detective Reeves said. We have enough to charge him with fraud and forgery. But Mrs. Cuban, I think there's something bigger happening here. These break-ins, the listening devices, the timing of everything, this is organized. Someone is orchestrating this, and I don't think it's just your son. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Unknown number. I looked at the detective, who nodded. I answered, putting it on speaker. Kathy. The voice made my heart stop. It was Richard. You're supposed to be dead, I whispered. A dry laugh. Not quite yet, though your son has been trying hard to make that happen. Where are you? Somewhere safe. For now. Listen to me carefully. Paul thinks I'm dead. He thinks he's getting the insurance money. But I changed my will last week. Everything goes to you, Kathy. The cabin. The accounts he doesn't know about. Everything. The accounts he doesn't know about? I repeated. Richard, what have you done? What I had to do to survive. Paul's been bleeding me dry for months, threatening to expose certain indiscretions unless I paid him. When he found out about my health problems, he saw an opportunity. He's been planning this for a long time, Kathy. Him and Jessica both. And the woman? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice was. Your affair? Silence. Then, she's why I'm still alive. She found me in the hospital after Paul left. She knew what he was planning. Who is she, Richard? Her name is Diana Myrick. She's a nurse at the hospital. And she's Jennifer Myrick's mother, your bank manager. The connection hit me like a slap. Jennifer had called me immediately about the withdrawal. She'd shown me the security footage without hesitation. She'd been trying to help, because her mother had told her to. Diana's been helping me stay hidden, Richard continued. But Paul knows I'm alive now. Those men who broke into your house, he sent them. He's desperate, Kathy. And desperate men do terrible things. Where are you? I asked again. The cabin. Diana got me here from the hospital, but they're coming. Paul figured it out. You need to get there first. There's a safe in the bedroom closet. Combination is our anniversary. Inside is everything you need. Bank statements, recordings, proof of everything Paul has done. Recordings? I knew he was planning something. I've been documenting everything for months. Get there before he does, Kathy. And be careful. He's my son, but right now, he's also a very dangerous man. The line went dead. Detective Reeves was already on her radio, calling for backup units to be sent to the cabin. What's the address? She asked. I looked at the property documents Caroline had spread on the table and read off the address. Then I grabbed my keys. Mrs. Cuban, you can't go there, the detective said. If your husband is right and your son is on his way, then I need to get there first, I said firmly. Those recordings are the only proof we have. And Richard is there, possibly injured, definitely in danger. I'm going. Then I'm going with you, Caroline said. Detective Reeves looked like she wanted to argue, but she could see the determination on my face. Fine. But I'm coming too, and you both stay behind me. Understood? We piled into 2 cars, Caroline and I in mine, Detective Reeves and her officers in the cruiser. The drive to the Poconos would take 90 minutes. I just hoped we had that much time. As we drove through the dark countryside, my phone buzzed with a text from Paul. Mom, I know you're awake. I saw the police at the house. What's going on? Please call me. I'm worried about you. Worried about me, or worried about what I'd discovered? Don't respond, Caroline advised. But I did. I typed, everything's fine. False alarm. Go back to sleep. I wanted him to think I was still at the house. I wanted him to think he still had time. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I did. Halfway to the cabin, Caroline's phone rang. She looked at the screen and gasped. It's Jessica. Don't answer it, I said. But Caroline was already sliding the answer button. Hello? Caroline, thank God. Is your mother with you? Jessica's voice was frantic, genuinely panicked. Please, you have to listen to me. Paul is not who you think he is. I've been trying to protect your mother, but he's... Stop lying, Caroline said coldly. We know everything. No, you don't, Jessica's voice cracked. Caroline, please. I made a mistake covering for him at the hospital, but I didn't know what he was planning. He told me he just needed to get some money to cover a debt, that Richard had agreed to it. I swear I didn't know. Didn't know what? Caroline demanded. A sob. That he was planning to kill your father. The car swerved. I steadied the wheel, my hands shaking. What are you talking about? Caroline asked. The stroke wasn't natural, Jessica whispered. Paul gave him something. I found the empty vial in our bathroom. Some kind of blood thinner. Something that would cause a stroke in someone with Richard's condition. I confronted Paul about it, and he... She stopped, breathing hard. He threatened me. Said if I told anyone, I'd go down with him. That's why I lied to the police. I was scared. Where is Paul now? I asked, leaning toward the phone. He left an hour ago. He said he was going to finish something. Kathy, I think he's going to the cabin. And I don't think he's planning to let Richard leave alive. The line went dead. I pressed the accelerator harder, the speedometer climbing. Detective Reeves's cruiser stayed right behind us, lights flashing in my rearview mirror. My son had tried to murder his father. Maybe had succeeded. I still didn't know if Richard was telling the truth about being alive, or if that phone call had been some kind of deception. And now Paul was racing toward that cabin, probably armed, definitely desperate. Everything I thought I knew about my family had been a lie. My marriage, my son, the life I'd built over 43 years, all of it was crumbling, revealing the rot underneath. But I wasn't that naive woman anymore, the one who'd made coffee in the same kitchen for 4 decades, trusting that the people she loved were who they claimed to be. That woman had died the moment I saw my son's face on that security footage. The woman driving toward that cabin was someone different, someone harder, someone who understood that love wasn't always enough, and someone who was about to do whatever it took to survive. The GPS showed 15 minutes to the cabin. In the distance, I saw smoke rising against the night sky. The smoke was thick and black, billowing up from somewhere beyond the tree line. I could smell it now through the closed windows. Acrid and chemical, not like a normal wood fire. That's coming from the direction of the cabin, Caroline said, her voice tight with fear. Detective Reeves pulled alongside us at a red light, gesturing for us to follow her lead. When the light changed, she accelerated hard, sirens wailing. I stayed close behind, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The cabin was set back from the main road, accessible only by a narrow dirt path that wound through dense pine forest. As we turned onto that path, the smoke grew thicker. Through the trees, I could see orange flames licking at the night sky. Oh God, Caroline whispered. If Dad's in there? He got out, I said, trying to convince myself as much as her. He had to have gotten out. But I didn't believe it. The fire was too large, too intense. It had been burning for a while. Detective Reeves's cruiser screeched to a halt 50 yards from the cabin. She jumped out, already on her radio calling for fire services. Caroline and I stumbled out of my car, the heat from the flames hitting us like a physical wall. The cabin was fully engulfed. Flames poured from every window, the roof already beginning to collapse. If anyone was inside, they were gone. "Stay back," Detective Reeves shouted, but I was already moving forward, scanning the area for any sign of life. That's when I saw him. Paul was standing at the edge of the tree line, illuminated by the fire's glow, staring at the burning building. His face was expressionless, empty. In his hand was a red gas can. "Paul!" I screamed. He turned slowly, as if waking from a dream. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Surprise, then calculation. "Mom," he said, "you shouldn't be here. What did you do?" I was running toward him now, rage overwhelming caution. "What did you do?" He dropped the gas can and held up his hands. I didn't have a choice. He was going to ruin everything. Detective Reeves was suddenly between us, her weapon drawn. "Paul Cuban, put your hands on your head. Now." He complied, moving slowly, mechanically. "She doesn't understand," he said, looking past the detective at me. "I did this for us, Mom. For the family. Dad was going to lose everything. The house, the money, all of it. He'd gambled it away on that woman, on his stupid fantasies. I was protecting you. By killing him? The words came out as a sob. He was already dying. The stroke should have finished it, but he was too stubborn. He was going to give everything to her, to Diana. Leave you with nothing after 43 years. I couldn't let that happen. So you stole from me instead, I said. You forged his signature? Emptied our account? I borrowed it, Paul interrupted. I was going to pay it back when the insurance came through. It was temporary, just to cover some debts until what? Until you murdered your father and collected $2 million? The other officers were approaching now, moving to flank Paul. He saw them and something changed in his expression, the mask slipping, revealing the desperate animal underneath. You don't understand the pressure I was under, he said, his voice rising. $3 million in debt. Creditors calling every day. Jessica threatening to leave. Everything I'd built, gone. And Dad just kept spending money on his mistress, buying her jewelry, taking her on trips while I was drowning. He owed me. He owed us. He didn't owe you murder, Caroline said, her voice shaking. Paul's laugh was bitter. Murder. Like what he did to this family wasn't murder. Slow murder. Death by 1,000 cuts. All those years, pretending to be a good husband, a good father, while he was planning his escape. You want to know the truth, Mom? He was going to leave you, next month. He had it all planned. Drain the accounts, disappear with Diana, start over somewhere warm. He told me all about it, bragging like I'd be impressed with his midlife crisis. I felt like I'd been punched. You're lying. Am I? Paul pulled something from his pocket. A phone. He recorded everything. Voice memos, like a diary. Want to hear him talk about how tired he was of playing house? How he felt trapped? How Diana made him feel young again? That's enough, Detective Reeves said sharply. Paul Cuban, you're under arrest for… The explosion cut her off. The cabin's propane tank, superheated by the fire, erupted with a deafening roar. The blast wave knocked us all backward. I hit the ground hard, my ears ringing, vision blurred. When I looked up, the cabin was gone. Just a crater of fire and debris. And Paul was running. He sprinted into the woods, moving fast despite the darkness. The officers gave chase, flashlights bouncing through the trees. Detective Reeves helped me to my feet. Are you hurt? I shook my head, though everything hurt. Caroline was beside me, soot-stained and coughing but alive. We need to secure the scene, Detective Reeves said into her radio. Suspect fled into the woods, heading northeast. I need K9 units and aerial support. But I wasn't listening. I was staring at the burning ruins of the cabin, thinking about Richard. If he'd been inside when Paul started that fire… Detective, I said. The safe. Richard said there was a safe in the bedroom closet with evidence, recordings, documents, everything we need. If it was in there, it's gone now, she said gently. No. I pulled out my phone and called the number Richard had used to contact me. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. I tried again, and again. Each time, voicemail. Maybe he got out, Caroline said. Maybe he saw Paul coming and ran. Or maybe Paul got here first, I said quietly. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Kathy, I'm alive. Meet me at Millbrook General, room 847. Come alone, please. I showed it to Detective Reeves. That could be a trap, she said. Or it could be Richard. Let me send officers to check it out first. No. I was already walking back to my car. If it's really him, he's terrified and hiding. A police presence will only make things worse. I need to go. Mrs. Cuban, Detective, my husband, if he's still alive, has information that could put my son in prison for attempted murder, fraud, and arson. Right now, I'm the only person he trusts. Let me do this. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Fine. But I'm sending an officer with you, non-negotiable. 20 minutes later, I was walking through the antiseptic corridors of Millbrook General Hospital, Caroline, and a young officer named Torres flanking me. Room 847 was in the cardiac wing, far from the main entrance. The door was closed. I knocked softly. Come in. Richard's voice, weak but unmistakable. He was sitting up in the hospital bed, connected to various monitors. He looked terrible, gray-skinned, hollow-eyed, 20 years older than when I'd last seen him, but he was alive. Standing beside him was a woman I didn't recognize. 50-something, dark hair, kind face. Diana Myrick. "Kathy," Richard said, and I heard genuine emotion in his voice. Regret, shame, fear. "The cabin's gone," I said without preamble. "Paul burned it down, with you supposedly inside." Diana gasped. Richard just nodded, as if he'd expected nothing less. "He tried once already," Richard said. "The medication that caused my stroke. Diana figured it out from my symptoms. She ran a tox screen without Paul knowing. Found potassium chloride in my system, enough to cause a cardiac event in someone with my condition." "Why didn't you report it?" Officer Torres asked. "Because he's my son," Richard said simply. "And I kept thinking I could fix it. That if I just gave him money, if I helped him out of his debt, he'd stop. But the more I gave, the more he wanted. And when I told him I was leaving Kathy for Diana, that I was going to sell the house and split everything fairly, he snapped. 'You were leaving me,' I repeated, the words feeling surreal. "I was," Richard admitted. "I'm not going to lie to you now, Kathy. Not anymore. Diana and I have been together for 3 years. I love her. I was planning to start over. But I was going to make sure you were taken care of. The house, half the assets, everything fair and legal." "Fair," I said bitterly. "After 43 years, you thought divorce and half the assets was fair." "More fair than what Paul had planned," Diana said quietly. "When I realized what he'd done, the poisoning, I convinced Richard to fake his death. We thought if Paul believed he'd succeeded, he'd stop. We'd have time to gather evidence, to figure out what to do. But he came to the hospital," Richard continued. "Convinced the night nurse I'd died. She called Paul to inform the family, and he took it from there. Came to tell you while I was being moved here under a false name." "The bank account?" I said. "He withdrew everything." "I knew he would," Richard said. "That's why I moved most of our assets 2 weeks ago. The account he emptied was real, but the bulk of our money, nearly $2 million, is in a trust I set up with you as the sole beneficiary. He doesn't know about it. $2 million. The same amount as the life insurance policy Paul thought he was getting. I have recordings," Richard continued, pulling out a small device. "Conversations with Paul where he threatened me, demanded money, talked about how easy it would be to make my death look natural. I've been documenting everything since I figured out what he was doing." Officer Torres took the device. "This is evidence in a criminal investigation. We'll need to process it." "There's more," Diana said. She pulled out a folder. "I've been documenting the medical side, the tox screen results. Photos of the medication vial I found in Paul's car. Timestamps showing when he visited Richard and when his symptoms would start." "You've been building a case," I said slowly. "We've been surviving," Richard corrected. "Paul is smart, Kathy, and he's desperate. That's a dangerous combination. We knew we needed ironclad evidence before we could move against him." My phone rang. "Detective Reeves." "We found him," she said without preamble. "Paul's in custody. He's asking for a lawyer and his mother. Says he won't talk to anyone else." I looked at Richard, at this man I'd spent most of my life with, and apparently never known at all. At Diana, who'd saved him. At Caroline, who'd supported me through everything. "Tell him I'll be there," I said. "But first, I need something from my house." After I hung up, Richard asked, "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done from the beginning," I said. "Protect myself." Because the truth was, I'd spent 43 years being protected. Protected by marriage, by routine, by the comfortable illusion of family stability. And look where that had gotten me. Betrayed by my husband, nearly destroyed by my son. No more. I left the hospital and drove home with Caroline. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, beautiful and indifferent to human suffering. At the house, I went straight to Richard's office. I knew what I was looking for now. In the filing cabinet, beneath the hanging folders was a false bottom, and beneath that was another folder. This one marked emergency documents. Inside were copies of everything. The trust paperwork showing the $2 million in my name. A second life insurance policy I'd never known about, worth another $1 million. deeds to 3 properties I'd never heard of, and a letter addressed to me in Richard's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. "Kathy," it began, "if you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. I've made mistakes, so many mistakes, but I need you to know that I always meant to protect you. The money in this account is yours. The properties are yours. Everything is documented and legal. Paul knows nothing about any of this. I made sure of that. Whatever happens to me, you'll be financially secure. I owe you that much, at least. Richard." "Mom?" Caroline was reading over my shoulder. "This changes everything." "No," I said. "This doesn't change anything about who they are or what they've done, but it means I have leverage." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Jessica. "Kathy, please, Paul's been arrested. They're saying he tried to kill Richard, that he burned down a cabin. This is insane. You have to help him. He's your son." "Where are you, Jessica?" "At home. The police were here asking questions, but they didn't arrest me. They said I might be charged as an accessory if I don't cooperate." "Kathy, I'm scared. I have 2 children to think about. I need to know what to do." 2 children. My grandchildren. I'd been so focused on Paul and Richard and the money that I'd almost forgotten about them. Innocent kids caught in the middle of their parents' disasters. "Come to my house," I said. "Bring the children. We need to talk." "Really?" Hope flooded her voice. "Really? But Jessica, come alone. No lawyers, no recording devices. Just you, me, and the truth." After I hung up, Caroline looked at me warily. "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to win," I said. "Not by force, not by revenge, but by being smarter than all of them. Because that's what they'd underestimated. All of them. Richard, Paul, Jessica. They'd seen a 67-year-old housewife and assumed I was weak, naive, easy to manipulate. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Detective Reeves called back. "Mrs. Cuban, we need you at the station. Paul's lawyer is here, and he's making some interesting claims. He says you've been harassing his client, making false accusations that you're suffering from dementia and are not competent to make financial decisions." Of course, that was Paul's play. Declare me mentally unfit. Gain control of my assets as my caretaker. "I'll be there in an hour," I said. "And detective, I'll be bringing my lawyer." I didn't have a lawyer, but I knew who to call. 20 minutes later, I was on the phone with Thomas Allen, the attorney who'd handled our estate planning years ago. He was semi-retired now, but I knew he'd remember me. "Kathy Cuban," he said warmly. "I heard about Richard. I'm so sorry." "Don't be," I said. "He's alive. And Thomas, I need your help. My son is trying to have me declared incompetent so he can steal my assets. I need you to file paperwork immediately. Power of attorney documents, competency evaluations, everything we need to prove I'm of sound mind." There was a pause. Then, "Tell me everything." So I did. All of it. The fraud, the poisoning, the fire, the hidden assets. Thomas listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Kathy," he finally said, "what you're describing is criminal conspiracy, attempted murder, and fraud on a massive scale. This isn't just a family dispute. This is going to destroy your son." "I know. And you're prepared for that?" I looked out the window at the house where I'd raised Paul, where I'd kissed his scraped knees and celebrated his birthdays and believed he was good. "He tried to kill his father," I said quietly. "He stole from me. He burned evidence. He's threatening to have me declared incompetent. Thomas, he's already destroyed himself. I'm just making sure he doesn't destroy me too." "All right then," Thomas said. "I'll file the paperwork this morning. Meet me at the police station at noon. And Kathy, don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, and don't talk to anyone without me present." When I hung up, Caroline was watching me with something like awe. "You're really doing this. I'm really doing this." Because the scared, trusting woman I'd been 3 days ago was gone. In her place was someone harder. Someone who understood that sometimes the people you love most are the ones who hurt you worst, and someone who refused to be a victim. The Millbrook police station was a squat brick building that smelled of burnt coffee and institutional disinfectant. I walked through the doors at exactly noon, Thomas Allen at my side, Caroline behind us. Thomas was 72, but moved with the crisp efficiency of a much younger man. He'd brought a leather briefcase that I knew contained every document we'd need. Detective Reeves met us in the lobby. "Mrs. Cuban, Mr. Allen, thank you for coming." She glanced at Caroline. "Miss Cuban, I'm afraid this meeting is limited to—" "My daughter stays," I said firmly. "She's witnessed everything that's happened. She's part of this." After a moment, Detective Reeves nodded. "Follow me." She led us to a conference room where Paul sat with his attorney, a sharp-eyed man in an expensive suit named Martin Cross. Paul looked exhausted, his clothes rumpled, his face unshaven. When he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Relief? Calculation? "Mom," he said, standing. "Thank God. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Tell them I would never—" "Sit down, Paul," Thomas said coldly. Martin Cross cleared his throat. "Mrs. Cuban, I'm representing your son. He's asked me to facilitate a family discussion before things go any further with the authorities. We believe there's been a series of unfortunate misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" Caroline's voice was sharp. "He tried to kill our father. He committed fraud. He burned down a cabin." "Allegedly," Cross interrupted smoothly. "My client maintains his innocence on all counts. However, we're concerned about Mrs. Cuban's mental state. The stress of her husband's death." "Richard's alive," I said flatly. The room went silent. Paul's face went white. "That's impossible," he whispered. "I saw him. At the hospital. He was dead." "You saw what Diana Myrick wanted you to see," Detective Reeves said. "She moved him to another room under a false name to protect him from you." Paul turned to his lawyer, panicked. "This doesn't change anything. They can't prove—" "We can prove everything," Thomas interrupted. He opened his briefcase and began laying out documents on the table. Bank records showing the fraudulent withdrawal. Security footage showing you at the bank. Toxicology reports showing potassium chloride in Richard's system. Medical records documenting when you visited him and when his symptoms began. And recordings. He pulled out the small device Richard had given me. Of you threatening your father, demanding money, and discussing how to make his death appear natural. Martin Cross reached for the device, but Thomas pulled it back. "This is evidence in an active criminal investigation. You'll get your copy through discovery." "There's more," I said, my voice steady. I pulled out the folder of documents from Richard's hidden cache. Life insurance policies, trust documents, property deeds, all showing assets that Paul knew nothing about, all protected from his schemes. I watched Paul's face as he processed this, saw the moment he understood that his plan had failed, that Richard had outmaneuvered him, that I had outmaneuvered him. "You conniving bastard," Paul breathed, but I wasn't sure if he was talking about Richard or me. "Paul," Martin Cross said quietly, "I need to speak with you alone." "No." Paul's voice was rising. "No, this is wrong. All of this is wrong. Mom, you have to understand. I was trying to help you. Dad was leaving you. He was going to take everything and run off with his mistress. I was protecting our family. By poisoning him?" I asked. "I didn't—" He stopped, realizing he'd been about to confess. His lawyer shot him a warning look. "Mr. Cuban," Detective Reeves said, "we have enough evidence to charge you with attempted murder, fraud, forgery, and arson. Your cooperation now could impact your sentencing." "Sentencing?" Paul laughed, a high, unstable sound. "You're talking about sentencing? I'm a first-time offender. I have a family. I was under extreme financial pressure." "You poisoned your father," Caroline said, her voice breaking. "You forged his signature. You stole from Mom. You burned down a building. Those aren't the actions of someone under pressure. Those are the actions of someone who thinks he's above consequences." Paul turned to me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Real or performed? I couldn't tell anymore. "Mom, please. I'm your son, your only son. Don't let them do this to me. Think about your grandchildren. They need their father." And there it was. The manipulation I'd been expecting. The appeal to my maternal instincts, to my role as the family peacemaker. 3 days ago, it might have worked. "Your children," I said quietly, "need to learn that actions have consequences. That you can't steal and lie and hurt people and expect to be forgiven just because you say please. Kathy, he was crying now, openly. I made mistakes. I know I did. But I can fix this. Just give me a chance to make it right. Thomas laid another document on the table. This is a petition for a competency hearing filed this morning by Mr. Cross on your son's behalf. It claims Mrs. Cuban is suffering from dementia, confusion, and is being unduly influenced by outside parties. It requests that Paul Cuban be appointed as her legal guardian with full control over her assets. I stared at my son. When did you file this? Martin Cross shifted uncomfortably. That was filed as a precautionary measure, Mrs. Cuban, to protect your interests in case I didn't cooperate, I finished. In case I insisted on pursuing charges. This was your backup plan, Paul. If you couldn't steal the money directly, you'd have me declared incompetent and take it legally. It's not like that, Paul said desperately. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. The stress, the grief, I'm thinking perfectly clearly, I said. Clearer than I have in years. And I'm done being manipulated. I pulled out my own documents, ones Thomas had prepared that morning. These are competency evaluations from 2 independent psychiatrists, both conducted this morning. Both conclude that I am of sound mind, capable of making my own decisions and under no undue influence. I laid out more papers. This is a restraining order against you, Paul. You are not to come within 500 feet of me, my home, or my assets. This is a formal statement rebutting your petition for guardianship, and this, I placed the final document on the table, is a power of attorney naming Caroline as my legal representative in all financial matters. You will never control my money. Not now. Not ever. Paul was shaking his head, backing away from the table. No, this isn't happening. You can't do this to me. I'm your son. And Richard was your father, I said. That didn't stop you from trying to kill him. I want to make a deal, Paul said suddenly, turning to Detective Reeves. I'll confess to the fraud, the forgery. I'll pay everything back. But the attempted murder, that's not what it looks like. I can explain. Don't say another word, Martin Cross snapped, but it was too late. Detective Reeves was already reading Paul his rights. 2 officers entered the room, and I watched as they handcuffed my son. Mom! Paul was shouting now, all pretense gone. You're really going to let them arrest me? Your own son? After everything I've done for this family? Everything you've done to this family, I corrected quietly. As they led him away, he was still shouting, his voice echoing down the corridor. Threats, pleas, accusations, all blurring together into noise. Martin Cross gathered his papers with stiff, angry movements. This isn't over, Mrs. Cuban. We will fight these charges, and I will be deposing everyone involved in this conspiracy against my client, including your husband, who faked his own death to avoid his debts. Richard's debts are his own concern, Thomas said calmly, and he'll be available for deposition once he's medically cleared. In the meantime, your client is facing serious criminal charges. I suggest you focus on that. After Cross left, slamming the door behind him, Detective Reeves sat down heavily. That went about as well as could be expected. What happens now? Caroline asked. Now we build the case, Reeves said. The DA will decide what charges to file formally. Given the evidence, I expect they'll pursue attempted murder, multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and arson. Paul's looking at significant prison time. How much time? I asked. If convicted on all counts? 20 to 30 years minimum? 20 to 30 years. Paul would be in his 70s when he got out. My grandchildren would be adults. He would miss everything. Part of me, the mother part, the part that had raised him and loved him, wanted to feel guilty, wanted to take it back, to find some way to save him. But that part was drowned out by the woman who'd been betrayed, stolen from, and nearly destroyed by her own son. There's one more thing, I said. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Jessica's voice filled the room. I found the empty vial in Paul's car. Some kind of blood thinner? Something that would cause a stroke in someone with Richard's condition? I confronted Paul about it, and he threatened me. Detective Reeves sat up straighter. When did you record this? Last night, during her phone call. She admitted Paul poisoned Richard. She admitted she knew about it and lied to protect him. I looked at the detective. She's an accessory, isn't she? Reeves nodded slowly. She could be charged, yes. Though if she's willing to testify against Paul, the DA might offer her a deal. She called me this morning, I said. She's coming to my house this afternoon with the children. She wants to talk. Thomas leaned forward. Kathy, what are you planning? I'm planning to give her a choice, I said. Testify against Paul, tell the truth about everything she knows, and I'll help her keep custody of the children. I'll make sure they're taken care of financially. But if she tries to protect him, if she lies again, I'll push for her to be charged as an accomplice. That's leverage, Thomas said approvingly. Though we should be present when you meet with her. No, I said. This needs to be between us. Woman to woman. Mother to mother. Caroline touched my arm. Mom, are you sure? She's been lying this whole time. I'm sure, I said. Because Jessica isn't like Paul. She's not a sociopath. She's a scared woman who made bad choices to protect herself. I can work with that. We left the police station an hour later, after giving formal statements and signing various documents. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright and warm. Normal. As if the world hadn't just shifted on its axis. Caroline drove me home. We rode in silence for a while, both processing what had just happened. Do you think Paul will plead guilty? Caroline finally asked. No, I said. He's too narcissistic for that. He'll fight it, claim he was set up, blame everyone else. It's what he's always done. And Jessica? Jessica will cooperate. She has to, for her children's sake. We pulled into my driveway. Jessica's car was already there, parked in the shade. Through the window, I could see my grandchildren in the back seat, Tyler, 9, and Emma, 7. They were playing on tablets, oblivious to the catastrophe unfolding around them. Do you want me to come in? Caroline asked. No. Wait out here. If I need you, I'll call. I walked to Jessica's car. She got out when she saw me, her face blotchy from crying, her hands shaking. Kathy, thank you for seeing me. I didn't know where else to go. The police called. They want me to come in for questioning, and I don't know what to do. My lawyer says I could be charged. Come inside, I said. Let the children play in the yard. You and I need to talk. I set up the kids with snacks and juice boxes on the back patio, then led Jessica into the kitchen. She sat at my table, the same table where Paul had stood 3 days ago and told me his father was dead. Tell me everything, I said. The truth, Jessica. All of it. And she did. She told me about Paul's gambling problem, hidden for years, about the failed investments he'd made without telling her, the lies about business trips that were actually meetings with loan sharks, about the day he came home and told her they were bankrupt, that everything was gone. He said his father owed him, Jessica said, wiping her eyes, that Richard had promised to leave him everything, but then started spending it all on Diana. He was so angry. I've never seen him like that. When did you know about the poisoning? I asked. I found the vial 2 weeks ago, after Richard had the stroke. I Googled it, potassium chloride, saw what it could do. I confronted Paul, and he told me it was insulin for a diabetic friend, but I knew he was lying. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I should have said something, I know that. But I was terrified. Of Paul. Of losing everything. Of my children being taken away. So you helped him, I said. I lied to the police about the hospital. That's all. I swear, Kathy, I didn't help him steal the money or burn the cabin. I didn't know he was planning any of that. I studied her face. She was telling the truth, I thought. Or at least what she believed was the truth. The police want you to testify against Paul, I said. If you do, if you tell them everything you know, I'll help you. I'll make sure you keep custody of the children. I'll set up a trust fund for their education. But Jessica, if you lie, if you try to protect him, I'll make sure you're charged as an accomplice. Do you understand? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. But Kathy, what happens to Tyler and Emma? How do I tell them their father is going to prison? You tell them the truth, I said. In age-appropriate ways. You tell them that their father made very bad choices and has to face consequences, And you make sure they understand that love doesn't mean protecting people from those consequences. Jessica broke down then, sobbing at my kitchen table. I didn't comfort her. I sat there watching and felt nothing but a cold, clear certainty. This was what survival looked like. Not gentle, not kind, but necessary. When Jessica finally composed herself, I walked her to her car. The children ran up, happy and oblivious, and I hugged them both. "Grandma? When is Grandpa coming home from the hospital?" Emma asked. "Soon, sweetheart," I said. "Very soon." After they left, Caroline came inside. "How did it go?" "She'll cooperate," I said. "She'll testify." "And Paul?" "Paul's going to prison." Caroline sat down at the kitchen table, in the same spot Jessica had occupied. "Mom, are you okay? Really okay?" Was I? I'd just condemned my son to decades in prison. I'd blackmailed my daughter-in-law into testifying against him. I'd discovered my husband was alive but had been planning to leave me for another woman. "No," I said honestly. "I'm not okay, but I will be, because I was still standing. Still in my house, in control of my assets, in possession of my faculties. I hadn't been destroyed by the men in my life or the son I'd raised. I'd survived. And somehow, that was enough. 3 months later, I stood in the courthouse hallway, watching through the window as autumn leaves skittered across the parking lot. The trees were bare now, stripped down to their essential forms. I felt a kinship with them, reduced to basics, but still standing. "Mrs. Cuban?" Thomas Allen approached with a file folder. "The judge is ready. Are you prepared for this?" Was I? Today was Paul's sentencing hearing. He'd pled guilty 2 weeks ago, finally accepting a deal that spared him a trial but guaranteed him 18 years in prison. 18 years for attempted murder, fraud, forgery, and arson. His lawyer had fought for less, but the evidence had been overwhelming. "I'm ready," I said. Caroline appeared beside me, linking her arm through mine. "You don't have to go in there, Mom. You've given your victim impact statement in writing. You don't owe him anything. But I did need to see it. Needed to watch this chapter close before I could begin the next one." We entered the courtroom. It was smaller than I'd expected, wood-paneled and formal. Paul sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. He'd lost weight in jail, his face gaunt and hollow. When he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or one last desperate plea. I took my seat and didn't look away. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Patricia Holloway, reviewed the case file. "Mr. Cuban, you've pled guilty to multiple felonies. Before I impose sentence, do you have anything you wish to say?" Paul stood, his lawyer beside him. "Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I was under immense pressure, financial, emotional. I made terrible decisions, but I never meant to hurt anyone. My father..." His voice broke. "My father is alive. Doesn't that count for something? Shouldn't that matter?" Judge Holloway's expression didn't change. "The fact that your victim survived doesn't negate your intent to kill him, Mr. Cuban, nor does it excuse your subsequent crimes. Stealing from your mother, destroying evidence, attempting to have her declared incompetent so you could continue stealing. These weren't the actions of someone under pressure. These were calculated, deliberate choices made over months, possibly years." "I was desperate," Paul said. "I was trying to save my family." "By destroying it?" The judge's voice was sharp. "Your children have lost their father. Your mother has lost her son. Your wife has lost her marriage and her sense of security. You didn't save your family, Mr. Cuban. You obliterated it." She opened another file. "I've read the victim impact statements from your mother, your father, and your wife. I've reviewed the psychiatric evaluations, the character references, the plea agreement, and I've considered the law." Judge Holloway looked directly at Paul. "Paul Cuban, I hereby sentence you to 18 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole after 12 years. You will also be required to make full restitution to your mother in the amount of $247,000, plus interest. Do you understand this sentence?" "Yes, Your Honor," Paul whispered. "Bailiff," remanded the defendant. As the officers led Paul away, he turned back to look at me one more time. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I saw him mouth 2 words, I'm sorry. Maybe he was. Maybe, in whatever capacity he had for genuine emotion, he actually felt remorse. But it didn't matter anymore. I stood and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Outside, the November air was cold and clean. Caroline hugged me tight. It's over, Mom. It's finally over. Not quite, I said. There's one more thing I need to do. We drove to Millbrook General Hospital. Richard had been discharged weeks ago, but was staying temporarily in a rehabilitation facility while he recovered his strength. I'd visited him once, shortly after the hearing to discuss the divorce proceedings. Today would be different. Diana Myrick was in the visitors' lounge when we arrived. She stood when she saw me, her expression wary but not hostile. Kathy, I wasn't expecting you. I know, but I thought we should talk. Without lawyers, without Caroline or Richard, just the two of us. Diana nodded slowly. All right, there's a garden out back. It's private. We walked in silence through the sterile corridors, past rooms filled with other people's tragedies and recoveries. The garden was small but well-maintained, with benches arranged around a fountain that had been turned off for winter. We sat, not quite facing each other, both staring at the dormant flower beds. I loved him, Diana said finally. I know that doesn't make it right. I know you were married for over 40 years, but I need you to know it wasn't casual. It wasn't just an affair. I know, I said. I read his letters, the ones he kept in the cabin. Diana looked at me, surprised. But the cabin burned. The safe survived, buried in the rubble but intact. The fire department found it during their investigation. I pulled a small envelope from my purse. These were inside. Love letters. Dozens of them, written by Richard to Diana over 3 years. I'd read them all, one painful word at a time. Read about how alive she made him feel, how he'd discovered passion again, how he'd been planning their future together. Why are you giving these to me? Diana asked. Because they're yours, and because I don't need them anymore. I paused. Diana, I'm not going to pretend this doesn't hurt. Richard and I spent most of our lives together. But somewhere along the way, we stopped being partners and started being strangers sharing a house. I didn't see it happening. Or maybe I saw it and chose to ignore it. Either way, we failed each other long before you came into the picture. That doesn't absolve me, Diana said quietly. No, it doesn't. But it does put things in perspective. I looked at her directly. You saved Richard's life. You risked your career, possibly your freedom, to protect him from Paul. You could have walked away, but you didn't. That counts for something. Diana's eyes filled with tears. What happens now, between you and Richard? We're divorcing. The paperwork is already filed. The settlement is fair. The house stays mine. We split the other assets evenly, and Richard gets the cabin once it's rebuilt. I smiled without humor. Turns out when you take away the theft and deception, we actually have enough for both of us to start over. And you're really okay with this? Was I okay? No. But I was surviving. I was moving forward. I'm getting there, I said honestly. Some days are harder than others. But Diana, here's what I need you to understand. Richard is your responsibility now. All of him. The good parts and the flawed parts and the selfish parts. You wanted a life with him. Now you have it. But don't expect me to clean up his messes or bail him out when things get difficult. I wouldn't ask you to. Good. I stood. I hope you two are happy. I genuinely do. Not because I'm a saint, but because I'm tired of carrying anger. It's too heavy, and I have better things to do with the rest of my life. I walked away before she could respond, leaving the letters on the bench behind me. Caroline was waiting in the parking lot. How do you feel? Lighter, I said. And it was true. Some burden I'd been carrying for months, maybe years, had lifted. We drove back to my house. My house. I'd stopped thinking of it as our house weeks ago. The divorce would be final in a few months, and then it would be legally, officially mine. Jessica's car was in the driveway. We'd arranged for her to bring the children over once a week for dinner. The visits were awkward but necessary. Tyler and Emma deserved to know their grandmother, and Jessica needed the support. Grandma! Emma ran up to hug me as I got out of the car. We made you pictures at school. Did you? I can't wait to see them. Tyler hung back, more reserved. At 9, he understood more than his sister about what had happened. He knew his father was in prison. He knew his family had been destroyed. "Hey, buddy," I said, kneeling down to his level. "How are you doing?" "Okay," he mumbled. Then quieter. "Dad called yesterday, from jail." My heart clenched. "What did he say?" "He said he was sorry. He said he made mistakes and he hopes someday I'll forgive him." Tyler looked at me with eyes too old for his face. "Do I have to forgive him, Grandma?" I thought about easy platitudes, about the things adults tell children to make them feel better. But Tyler deserved the truth. "No," I said. "You don't have to forgive him. Maybe someday you will, maybe you won't. But right now, you're allowed to feel however you feel. Angry, sad, confused, all of it. And none of those feelings make you a bad person. Mom says I should pray for him. That's between you and your mom. But Tyler, here's what I know. Your father made choices, bad choices, and now he's facing consequences. That's not your fault. It's not your responsibility to fix. Your job is to be a kid, to do well in school, to take care of your sister. Can you do that?" He nodded, and I saw some of the tension leave his small shoulders. Inside, I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread, and we ate at the kitchen table. Caroline told funny stories about her law practice. Emma chattered about her teacher and her friends. Tyler was quiet, but ate 2 helpings. Jessica helped me clean up afterward, the 2 of us working in careful silence. "The district attorney's office called," she said finally. "They want me to testify at another hearing. Something about Paul appealing his sentence. Will you do it?" "Yes." She dried a plate with mechanical precision. "My therapist says testifying is part of taking responsibility for my choices. That I enabled Paul, even if I didn't commit the crimes myself. Your therapist is right." Jessica set down the plate. "Kathy, I need to ask you something. The trust fund you set up for the kids, the one for their education. It's too much. It's over $500,000. "It's exactly enough," I said. "Tyler and Emma didn't choose their father. They shouldn't suffer because of him. This way, they can go to good colleges, start their adult lives without debt. It's not charity, Jessica. It's family. But after everything Paul did to you..." "Paul is in prison," I said firmly. "Tyler and Emma are innocent. There's a difference." After they left, Caroline and I sat on the back porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars emerge. The night was clear and cold, the kind of cold that feels clarifying. "What are you going to do now, Mom?" Caroline asked. "Really do, I mean, now that all the legal stuff is settling." I'd been thinking about that question for weeks. What does a 67-year-old woman do when her entire life has been dismantled and rebuilt? "I'm going to live," I said simply. "I'm going to travel. Maybe to Ireland, maybe to Italy. Places Richard never wanted to go. I'm going to take art classes at the community center. I'm going to spend time with you and the grandchildren. I'm going to figure out who Kathy Cuban is when she's not someone's wife or someone's victim." That sounds like a good plan. It's not really a plan. It's more like permission. We sat in comfortable silence, and I thought about everything that had happened. 3 months ago, I'd been a widow, or thought I was. A woman whose life had been stolen, whose son had betrayed her, whose husband had deceived her. Now I was something else entirely. A survivor, a fighter. A woman who'd looked at the wreckage of her life and decided to build something new from the pieces. Was I healed? No. Did I still have hard days when the grief and anger threatened to overwhelm me? Absolutely. But I was here, in my house with my daughter, planning a future I'd never imagined. And that was more than enough. 6 months after Paul's sentencing, I did something I'd been planning for weeks. I drove to the prison where he was being held. I hadn't told anyone. Not Caroline, not Thomas, not Jessica. This was something I needed to do alone. The visiting room was institutional and depressing, filled with plastic chairs and tables bolted to the floor. Paul was brought in wearing prison blues, his hair shorter, his face harder. He looked older than 38, worn down by the reality of his choices. "Mom," he said, sitting down across from me, "I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Paul said, "I've been in therapy. Court-ordered, but still. Dr. Morrison says I have narcissistic personality disorder, that I was unable to see past my own needs, my own perspective. She says that's not an excuse, but it's an explanation. Is it helping? The therapy? I don't know. Maybe. I'm starting to see things differently, starting to understand what I did, really understand it." He looked at his hands. "I tried to kill Dad. I stole from you. I destroyed our family. And for what? Money that wouldn't have even covered my debts. You destroyed our family long before the poisoning," I said quietly. "When you started lying. When you chose manipulation over honesty. When you decided your needs mattered more than anyone else's." "I know." He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. But I am. I'm so sorry." I believed him. In that moment, looking at my broken son in his prison uniform, I believed he felt genuine remorse. "Paul, I forgive you," I said. He stared at me, shocked. "You... what?" "I forgive you, not because what you did is forgivable, not because you've earned it, but because carrying anger and bitterness is poisoning me, and I'm choosing to let it go." "But how?" "After everything, forgiveness isn't about you," I said. "It's about me. It's about reclaiming my peace, my joy, my ability to move forward. You're going to be in here for 12 more years at minimum. I'm not going to spend that time consumed by what you did to me." Paul was crying openly now. "Do you think, someday, do you think we could have a relationship again? After I get out?" I considered the question honestly. "I don't know. Maybe. But that's years away, Paul. A lot can change in 12 years. You're going to change. I'm going to change. We'll have to see who we both are on the other side of this. Will you write to me? Visit occasionally? I'll think about it. But Paul, I need you to understand. You're not the center of my life anymore. You're not my priority. Taking care of myself is my priority. Building a new life is my priority. If visiting you serves that goal, I will. If it doesn't, I won't. And that has to be okay with you." He nodded slowly. "I understand." I stood. "There's one more thing. Tyler and Emma. They're going to have questions as they get older. Questions about you, about what happened. I'm not going to lie to them. I'm going to tell them the truth, in age-appropriate ways. They deserve to know who their father really is. All of it, the good and the bad." "Okay," Paul whispered. I left the prison feeling strange. Not happy, exactly. Not sad. Just clear. I'd done what I needed to do. Said what I needed to say. The rest was up to Paul. That evening, I had dinner with Richard and Diana. It had been Richard's idea, extended through his lawyer. A chance to sit down together, all three of us, and try to be civil. Caroline thought I was crazy to agree, but I'd surprised myself by saying yes. We met at a small restaurant in Easton, neutral territory. Richard looked healthier than he had in the hospital, though he walked with a cane now. Diana was beside him, her hand on his arm. Protective. Possessive. "Kathy," Richard said as I sat down, "thank you for coming." "I almost didn't," I said. It seemed to be my refrain lately. We ordered food, awkward small talk about the menu, the weather, anything but the elephant in the room. Finally, over appetizers, Richard said, "I owe you an apology, a real one. You've apologized before." "No, I've made excuses. I've explained my reasoning. But I've never just said, 'I'm sorry I betrayed you. I'm sorry I planned to leave you without having the courage to talk to you first. I'm sorry I was a coward.'" I looked at this man I'd spent most of my life with. I'd loved him once, or thought I had. Now, sitting across from him and his lover, I felt nothing. No anger, no love, no bitterness. Just a distant, cool indifference. "I accept your apology," I said. Diana shifted uncomfortably. "Kathy, I owe you an apology too. What Richard and I did, the affair, it was wrong. I knew he was married. I knew it would hurt you. I did it anyway." "Yes, you did," I agreed. "But Diana, here's the thing. You and Richard are together now. You're building a life. I'm not going to spend my energy being angry about it. I'm moving on." Just like that? Richard asked, and I heard something in his voice. Disappointment? Had he wanted me to fight for him? Just like that, I confirmed. Richard, we failed each other. Both of us. I became complacent. You became restless. Instead of addressing it, we let it fester until there was nothing left to save. That's on both of us. We ate in silence for a while. Then Richard said, I heard you're planning to travel. Ireland in the spring? Italy in the fall? Maybe Greece next year? That sounds wonderful. You always wanted to travel. We always wanted to travel, I corrected. But you were always too busy with work, or too tired, or there was never enough money. Turns out there was plenty of money. We just had different priorities. The divorce papers were signed 2 weeks later. 43 years of marriage, ended with signatures and notary stamps. I kept the house, the furniture, and most of the savings. Richard got his pension, some investments, and the insurance policy that Paul had tried so hard to claim. We split the rest down the middle. Fair, as divorces go. Civil. Almost friendly. Almost. On a bright morning in May, I stood in my kitchen, making coffee. The same kitchen where I'd learned my husband was supposedly dead. The same kitchen where my son had lied to my face. The same kitchen where I'd begun to uncover the truth. But it felt different now. Lighter. Mine. Caroline's car pulled into the driveway, and she came in without knocking, a habit I'd encouraged. My house was always open to her. Ready for your big adventure? She asked, grinning. As ready as I'll ever be. My suitcase sat by the door, packed for Ireland. 2 weeks exploring castles and coastlines, drinking tea and walking through ancient villages. Alone, because I'd learned that alone didn't mean lonely. As we loaded my car, I looked back at the house. 43 years of memories lived in those walls. Some beautiful, some painful, all of them part of who I was. But they didn't define me anymore. I was Kathy Cuban, not Richard's wife, not Paul's mother, not a victim or a martyr or a woman who'd been destroyed by the men in her life. Just Kathy, 67 years old, scarred and stronger for it, ready to discover who she'd been meant to be all along. Caroline hugged me at the airport. Call me when you land. I will. Take care of the house. Take care of yourself. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. As I walked toward security, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, maybe decades. Freedom. Not from responsibility or family or the complications of life, but from the need to be anyone other than myself. The security line moved quickly. My boarding pass scanned without issue. The plane was on time. Everything was falling into place. Not perfectly. Life was never perfect, but well enough, good enough, more than enough. I settled into my seat, opened my book, and smiled. The plane lifted into the sky, carrying me toward something new. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I couldn't wait to see what came next. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.